Hey, it's Chris, Leisure Games. Let's do this. A little bit different. 2 and 2. If you saw, may not have, 2 weeks ago, I did a video on 3 indie games that I thought were worth talking about and worth mentioning. And that is going to be a recurring video on my channel because I like talking about these games. And now, one of these is going to surprise you. It's not indie, but it's indie. One of them is also surpassing all funding goals I think that they had ever thought of in the first place. And then 2 games that are on crowdfunding currently that I think deserve a little bit more of a look-see. So, let's do this. The first, and you can see this massive box that's literally, next to me, is the Tibaru system. However you want to pronounce it. The Bad Karmas and the Curse of the Zodiac. Now, 12 Zodiac? More Zodiac? What is it going to be? And this one, again, is a little bit of a different aspect of things. I think it's worth talking about. These are some cool minis, big miniatures here, as well as some very special bases to interact with on the board itself. And let's talk about the board itself, because this is a very divisive situation right here with this board, right? You're going to pay a lot for this. This is a board, but the way I would describe it as well with this is more of a console, as the description has been used. It's more of a console, a vessel. And the fortunate or unfortunate thing is it's being bundled with a game itself already. With the scheme, with the thought process behind it, going, okay, you're going to buy other games that are going to be usable with this thing, right? And, be porting over your different various game boards on it in the first place, right? How does that make you feel? It's mixed bag. Because there are plenty of people in our hobby that just don't like video app integration systems. And I completely understand. At the same time, having played several other app-based, app-driven, app-involved games, they are not all equal by any means. And so to lump them in, just like with any board game mechanism that you don't like, I don't like worker placement. Well, I don't like worker placement for the whole, right? But I have a couple worker placement adjacent games in my collection. I am a huge convert of Dune Imperium. And so sometimes you have to step out of your comfort zone with this. And that's what this is doing. On the pro side of things, it's easy to play. It's easy to use. There's not a whole lot of issue from the integration, from moving stuff around. It is a well-designed system. Give them a lot of kudos on that. Comparatively, with these miniatures, these are better than some of the smaller miniatures that I have seen in the past from other companies. I mean, Lucky Duck Games, for example, the other app-based really system that's being used that people had similar concerns about when Lucky Duck said, we're going to have this system, we're going to set it up, and we're going to use it in the future. Now, we are several games down the line, including the recently launched Dark Quarter, and it's gained a lot of traction. And they're having multiple uses for it. So the question just is, can you duplicate the success of someone else with a different system that is somewhat similar at the same time? That's the big unknown. And the big unknown with it as well from that aspect is, what is it going to look like post-release? How much support is there going to be? Now, they've said clearly that there are plans, there are discussions, there are situations that they are looking at already to get other games involved in this. And so, again, great. But the question, like I see on some of the other technology on crowdfunding, are you an early adopter? Or is it going to be continued on further down the line? Because the other counterpoint to this is this bad boy, who you might recognize from almost a decade ago, right? 2014 Golem Arcana. And that has not fared so well over the test of time. Now, again, some nuances, some differences. I mean, they are not apples to apples. It's apples to oranges in a sense. But I think the game itself with Golem Arcana was not as well developed necessarily as this game is. And so does that change things? And also they've said, well, this is the Tibaru system, this is the board, this is the game, and we're lumping them together. And so when you lump them together, it's going to cost you more. And are you willing to buy in now and get it maybe at a slightly reduced cost compared to the other times? A retail release, further crowdfunding with the system, whatever it may be from that aspect. You're taking a little bit of a risk being an early adopter, as you are with all technological things nowadays. And how risk averse are you? What is the support going to look like? Batteries, digital implementations, ease of access, further support post-release. All of those things are legitimate concerns. They are. So, I don't have any of those answers. Nobody has any of those answers right now. But they're food for thought in terms of, are you okay with that? Now, on the pro side of things, the biggest challenge, I've got these guys stomping around on the board and these guys hammering away at the good guys. It takes away a lot of the overhead. The AI that you're worrying about, the AI that you're trying to remember. When I look at games that are in my collection right now, I'm looking at Bloodborne, I've got Rise of Malak behind me, the others with Simon, similar style games. The price point's not really any different for the whole thing, right? You can make an argument that the price point is actually maybe even slightly better. It's pretty similar in that sense. But the biggest challenge with some of those games, dungeon crawlers in general, one of the criticisms that's been leveled at several that have launched in the last 6 months, the rules overhead is this high. And unless you're making it more of a lifestyle game, it's hard to remember all of the nuances. And so what you're paying for not having to remember all of those nuances. You're paying for ease of access to get to the table in a digital implementation. And you're paying for your time, essentially. Are you willing to pay more to have less time involved later, up here, but also down here, for something like this? And that's the main point that I think you have to, some of you have way too much time and not enough people to play with. If you're like me, I don't have enough time and I don't have enough people to play with, but that's, I don't have enough time sometimes to learn or relearn these games all the time. That's why I'm staring at my copy of Tainted Grail and I haven't played it yet. Like, learned it, forgot it, gotta relearn it. And this, you're paying a little bit extra, not that much extra comparatively, to not have to do that. And so that is the main point I would drive home in whether or not this is for you. Again, I don't think the game is a question. Game's solid. I don't think that's going to be any, make it or break it. The theme, it's great. If you want to see more gameplay, there are people who are going to give you much better aspects of that, but I think it's driving home an interesting point, and that's why I need to talk about it. Last food for thought here. Let's go over to the page, right? You're getting the console, like I said, and you're getting the board game. No rule book, just learn by playing. 1 to 5 players. Again, the AI is taken care of. You can play solo. You can play multi-handed. I mean, the ease of access from those aspects cannot be undersold. So I give them a lot of kudos from that aspect. This is a cool idea. It's a cool design. Again, does it last the test of time? I think, again, you can have more of these guys. You can have more crazy asymmetry because you're not having to remember it overhead wise. And so that's really the big benefit. Current stretch goals, again, great. Different scenarios, great. Price point, again, it's not dramatically different than a lot of the other stuff that you're going to see. This multiverse pledge is by far and away. But again, the basic get in at this point is not dramatically different than what we saw for, say, Madara Part 1. Slightly more expensive, but you're getting some of this other stuff as well. So it's not terribly different if you account for inflation between now and, when Madara first was on crowdfunding. And if you just want the kit right here, there you go. But yeah, it's going to cost you 200 plus to get in. 300, this isn't terribly different than the Monster Hunter world or Primal. You know, again, this is Primal, not having to remember all the uniquenesses and the differences in how the bosses are going to AI act and interact with you on a turn-by-turn basis. So ease of access to get to the table is significantly better. But again, how do you feel about that is more of the issue. Do you need all of this other stuff? Because, again, the all-in is not terribly different, especially, like I said, accounting for inflation. Now, if you just want the board itself and you're looking at stuff in the future, you can get that. Now, that's, you know, that's a little riskier just by the nature of it. Without any firm concrete, I know that this is coming to this platform, I'd be hesitant, but I understand why people would be considering this as well. If you don't want this game, if you want to see what else is out there. But I would argue that maybe you're better off waiting for the actual game to come out then too. But then on the other side, whether or not the next crowdfunding campaign for the game that uses this system, will they offer the board? Will you have to pick up the board at retail? You know, crowdfunding campaigns sometimes, are offering the previous cores, and sometimes they're not nowadays. There you go. Food for thought. It's almost at 300,000. So that's still relatively impressive for an indie company doing something different. So next up, something completely different. A completely different take and a completely different style. And I'm holding this, another large black box. This is UND 1C1. And this is a fantastic playmat of the game itself. I cannot emphasize, this is a massive playmat, folks. And this is what you're getting in the game. And so right there, it reminds me very much of Cosmic Frog, right? You don't have to have this ridiculously overpriced situation to get quality game and quality materials and things that go along with it. And this, playmat has everything you need on it. Now, I will say, the one detriment, and I'm not sure, this is my lack of knowledge at this point, these chips are not quite as nice as I would like. But I think they're offering, comparatively on the campaign versus what I've got here. I mean, this is prototype still, so I'm not going to hold them to that. And I think this is going to be better because they're sort of this light plastic with, I had to put the stickers on, which again, who cares? I had to put the stickers on in a lot of games. So, I'm looking at Catacombs 3rd edition, done that a ton. And this game, it's very interesting. This is probably, I haven't played too many of these soccer games, but I can't imagine that there are many games that are more tactical in nature that represent the soccer, football, whatever you want to call it, gameplay to this degree. And I say that as a very positive. When I played this the first time, I looked at this and I said, wow, this is really, I'm going to move guys around and, you're going to take your 3 actions and then the other person's going to take their 3 actions and it's just going to fly back and forth and it's going to turn into a game more like Clask than it is football. I was wrong. Wholeheartedly wrong. Very tactical, slightly less strategic, but offering you options and opportunities for a little bit more strategy. I think the final score of my first game was 1-0. This is not like a very robust back and forth end game, unrealistic, gonna be Germany-Brazil 7-1, That was not my experience with this game at all so far. You're going to see on some of these pictures that are floating across the screen, at the bottom of these little guys, there's a bunch of symbols. And first up, these symbols are a little bit overwhelming. I won't lie. But once you play once or twice, they're relatively intuitive. +1, +2, corner kicks, dribbling, tackling, blocking, extra movement at the end of the turn. So there's nothing overly complicated about them. They've just ported them all to, little chips. So you don't have to look them up. Now, does it do a good job? Yes, it does. The game itself is relatively good. Now, I'm not good enough from a strategic standpoint, probably. That is not my strong suit to be able to say, okay, well, I need to have this guy. Because I look at this and you've got 18 guys, right? 2 goalies, 16 other players. And you're playing an 11-man team in terms of roster. And so picking and choosing from them not my strong suit. So I can't tell you like, oh yeah, clearly, and this is probably the biggest point I would, for me personally, I wasn't able to drastically distinguish between, okay, I should have this guy on the bench and I should, have this guy in my lineup if I want to do this a little bit differently. And they give you starting lineups for, what you want. This one is going to be a 4-4-2 versus, the other team, which is going to be a 4-3-3, however you want to do it, right? And so it gives you a couple extra defenders, a couple extra midfielders, a couple extra, forwards that you can swap in and swap out if you want to. And they tell you, okay, these are the starting 11 that maybe you should choose to begin with. And so it works really well. I can't tell you there's a drastic amount of differentiation between some of these, on an individual team. Now, the teams themselves are done differently because those are the white tokens. And then we've got the black chips here as well. So again, you've got two different sets there. And each team comes with their own set of these cards. And this is where some of the randomness comes in, which you may want a little bit more of. And some of it comes in where you may not want it. And so you can choose to use these or not. At the end of your return, you draw one of these cards and you can use it when it says. So this one, better passing when I'm passing across the board. This one, better pace, moving faster. This one, better timing of my tackling. All the purple ones are the goalie ones. And they're good. Some are instant effects, some are continuous. But, you get a deck and you don't use all of them. You only get about this much of them. And then your opponent may have a different set of the same amount. So you might not have all the same that your opponent does, which again is okay. And again, like I said, it's probably one of the most tactical, and this is going to sound weird, strategic games that I have played, even though we also have the use of these dice and these locks. And you may look at this and go, well, that doesn't sound very strategic or tactical, Chris, if you're using dice. The dice are used for shooting and passing, but there are so many ways to modify, depending on the players that have the modifiers on them themselves, spots on the play mat, as you saw me hold up, that there's markings all over the place, +1s, -1s, -2s, simulating, okay, the further you are from the goal, the harder it's going to be to shoot this in. It's going to be a -3 to whatever you roll, plus whatever modifiers you have. But if you want to take that shot from outside the box, you can. And you roll head to head in a lot of these. My goalie skill versus your shot skill. And then the other interesting aspect here are these little locks. And I'll blow up the picture across when I'm talking about this right here. But these locks, at the end of your every turn, you get to place them anywhere you want on the board. And they potentially block off places where the other opponent cannot move his defender, his attacker into. So if you don't have the ball and you do your actions, then you can place them down. So, okay, I'm going to force you to go into my defenders this way. I'm going to force your defenders not to be able to get right back at me and get the ball away from me. So I wasn't expecting that, but it works. The other concern I have just in general is, there are a lot of add-ons for additional teams in this. And that would be my only question. Like, I don't see myself substituting as much. And there are two goalies, right? Like, I'm not going to substitute my goalie because one of my goalies here has the purple and the yellow on it. And my backup goalie only has the purple. So I'm going, well, why would I ever use my backup goalie? I mean, he's clearly inferior and you can't get injured. You can't lose them. So as I drop a piece here, why would I ever use my backup goalie? So, I mean, that's a small thing that I just go, okay, well, I don't think I need, that many. Most of them have, 2, some have 3, but even some of these have 4 different abilities. And so there's just such a plethora of them. I wish they were slightly more differentiated. And I would hope that some of the teams that they're offering in the campaign are going to allow for that. So going to the pledge here, again, this one doesn't have much less than Tibaru, right? $233,000 for a $7,000 goal. Like I said, they were not expecting this. And I'll give them a lot of kudos. If you're looking for a solid soccer simulator, I would make an argument that this is a really good representation of that. I was really impressed. I wasn't sure what to expect when I actually had it. It plays in 40 to 60 minutes because it's self-contained. Again, just like soccer, there is a time limit to this in the sense of you drawing your cards. And those cards that I mentioned are, essentially the time limit. Now, there's an early bird, say what you will. Okay, great. Coach cards, again, very interesting, very different. Which ones you get, you can see all of the icons here. The little colors in the middle there Red are your defenders, and then they tell you even what side they have to be set up on to begin with. Yellow are your midfielders, and then the green ones are your forwards. So again, it's all very intuitive. Here are the dice and the locks that I was talking about. Easy enough to play, easy enough setup. Is it more expensive than what you might think it is? Yeah, but I mean, again, it's a really, really freaking nice playmat. The box is amazing, and this is a prototype. This is probably one of the best prototypes I've had easily in 2022. Easily. The only question is, do you need all of the teams that go along with it? Because, again, scenarios, great. Joker players, great. Allows you to put them wherever you want. The only question I had here was, if we scroll down here, again, how different are some of these? Because, I mean, yes, there's a little bit difference between some of them. Again, because you're going to have different players with different skill sets. They give you the team stats here that you can break down. 3-5-2 that I mentioned. But when you go all the way down here to the add-ons, that would be my only question. Is like you have these 2 additional club teams for €9, 8 additional club teams of your choice for 29. So how different are these 12 teams? Because as different as they are slightly, I just don't... Again, I have a couple of the teams. I've played them a little bit. I never really felt like I was drastically different. Are they different? Yes. Are you going to have different setups? Yes. But the setup is slightly less overall than it is in soccer, and that's probably the biggest criticism I can level at it. But if you got this base game and you had 2 or 4 teams, I think you would be very, very, very happy with it from that aspect. So I don't think you need them all by any means. I think having 4 of them would be more than enough, and you would be very happy. Now, on to the 2 games that I think need to be on your radar. Iconoclash finally launched. The closest thing you're going to see to sort of a Super Smash Brothers on the tabletop. I've read the rule book. Again, it's not going to appeal to everybody. It's going to have some take that. It's going to be more King of Tokyo, but it's not nearly as drastic in the player elimination aspect of King of Tokyo is, while still offering some variety and some variability. And it's not terribly expensive. If you want to get everything, it's going to cost you $80. And that's going to be 4 sets of characters with 4 different levels that you can play across. Simple, complex variants, you get everything that you need to, including all of the items that fall and the characters that are going to have, asymmetric abilities and powers. I think this one's going to fly under a lot of radars, and so I think you should check it out. It is almost funded within 24 hours. Again, as a very small indie game, going up against some heavy hitters this week. Now, the other game that I'm going to talk about here is by the maker of Eero. If you can't see, I talked about last time. This is Sayu. This is a triggered chain reaction, almost domino-esque game where you are trying to end up like Go or Othello, where you are flipping these pieces, trying to get the most at the end of the game in a strategic tile-laying manner to your side as opposed to your opponent's side. Can't have the same orientation of the white arrow, but when you lay down your piece, it flips over one of the other pieces according to the black or red arrows that are on the outside. Also, it's a self-contained game in the sense that you can't place it more than 3 tiles away, so you have a 7x7 grid here at the end. So very Othello-like in the size. Again, you have to have it pointed towards your opponent's tile that you played out, then you flip it over, and it must not have their color arrow pointing back at you. And then go. So again, as a small-time indie publishing game, I think you got to give this one a check out as well. They are almost just like the other one, within funding goal. And so again, under 24 hours, good, interesting, abstract, done differently. So, Sayu, there you go. There you go. My thoughts on 2 games coming to a close, as well as 2 indie games starting their campaign. I love talking about these ones. Thought I'd give them a little bit different, a little bit special shout out in a separate video than just the usual roundup or upcoming videos. So, there you go. As always, let me know what you think. Let me know if any of these sound interesting to you. If you want your game on this, if you want to see a certain game, let me know. I'm happy to talk about them. I'm always happy to take a look and, see what's out there. So, there you go. I got another video coming up tomorrow that you guys are going to be liking. Something a little bit different spin. That's all I got. Stay classy. Thanks for watching. Smash the like button. So it lets YouTube know you like the video, and maybe other people should be considering liking it too. As always, thanks for watching though. See you around.